Today we are going to be discussing, among others, habeas corpus, which is a legal term that is ingrained in constitutions around the world, especially in democratic countries, where the freedom of speech, where freedom of citizens is paramount and held very dear. So let's take a look at this concept, habeas corpus. What is it? How is it applied? And how does that impact citizens in a civil society to ensure their rights are not violated? So let's begin by looking at the definition of this term that is specifically in the North American context. It is part of the US Constitution that has been there for many, many years. And again, a concept, an idea that has been the hallmark of freedom and democracy and personal liberty of citizens. All right, so habeas corpus is a legal principle that protects an individual's right. A couple of things happening here. One, it's a legal principle. Two, protects. And three, individual rights. So let's number this. This is one, this is two, this is three. Please take note of these points. These are very critical points. What is habeas corpus? Legal principle that protects an individual's right to not be detained unlawfully. So now this is four. So let's put that here. This is four, right? So we have one, two, three, and four, right? Legal principle, protection, individual rights, and unlawfully. So let's take that one more time. Habeas corpus is a legal principle that protects an individual's right to not be detained unlawfully. Now, the key word here is unlawfully. If someone is detained lawfully, there's no issue there. If the law has determined that the person is subject to detention, there is no issue there. Unlawful is the issue. So we want to determine if the person is detained unlawfully. And this speaks to individual, this is individual liberty I talked about earlier. This is liberty. Individual liberty I talked about earlier, right? It speaks to that. To ensure that individual liberty is not lost, that it is protected, it is ensured that the human rights of citizens, right, are in place, are not tampered with. And sometimes there could be rogue officers that will seek to detain people based on frivolous charges and things that cannot meet any legal standards. So this is to protect against that. Please take note, students. The term habeas corpus translates from Latin to "you shall have the body," right? You shall have the body. So who's having the body? The state. Who's having the body? The authorities. But then the person whose body is being taken into custody can say, I have done nothing wrong. I am being held unlawfully, and I want a court of law to determine that, to give me back my freedom, right? The person can say that. And that's what the whole concept is about. The whole concept of habeas corpus is for citizens to have the ability to challenge their detention. Please take note, students. Very key point here. The ability of citizens, let's put that here, right? Ability. This is the ability of citizens to challenge their detention. This is their detention, right? So please take note of that. And why is that important? And now let's take a look at it a bit more critically. Why is that important? Because there is a tendency for abuse. In every society, there's a tendency for abuse. There's a tendency for overreaction. There's a tendency to violate rights of citizens, especially those that don't have the means to defend themselves properly. And so the Constitution protects against that to ensure that citizens, regardless of your economic status, you can challenge your detention and let a court of law determine that. All right, so let's take a look at this closely. Once again, the term habeas corpus translates from Latin to "you shall have the body." Again, we shall have the body, the state, the authority. And it refers to a legal action or right through which a person can seek relief from unlawful detention. Seeking relief in a court. The relief comes in a court. This is court. Right? Seeking relief in the court of law of unlawful detention. And if the court determines you're lawfully detained, it can order your release through a writ. A writ is an order from a court to follow a directive, in this case, to release somebody that has been unlawfully detained. All right, so it allows a person in custody to challenge the legality of their imprisonment before a court of law. So let's move on. The right of habeas corpus requires the custodian, so typically the authority, the government, the police, to bring the detainee before a court of law. You have to provide the evidence that says this person is a flight risk. This person is a risk to the community, to the society. This person must be held until the case can be heard. The government, the holding body, has to bring that evidence to the court of law and to prove that the detention is warranted. Right? So, with evidence justifying the detention, if the court finds that the detention is unlawful, it can order the release of the individual. It can write a writ. Let's come back to this. A writ is a statement, it's an order from the court of law for action to be taken. If the court finds that the detention is unlawful, it can order the release of the individual. This principle is fundamental. Please take note of this, students. Is fundamental to ensuring the personal freedom and protecting against arbitrary arrest and detention. And it is a cornerstone of many legal systems across the world. This is key and this is very important. And this is the cornerstone, as already indicated here, the cornerstone of many legal systems around the world. Is one of the safeguards against abuse in a democratic setting, and that is provided for in the Constitution to protect ordinary citizens from unlawful arrest. Now, if the government arrests a citizen, say for example, accuses a citizen of assault and arrests the person, well, it's incumbent upon the government to show proof that this person has assaulted another person and is threatening to do further harm to that person and their relatives. Now, if they can prove that, let's say they have a videotape where the person is threatening, that will be sufficient evidence in most cases to continue to hold the person, because there is strong suspicion that there might be harm done to the victim and the victim's family. But that evidence has to be brought to court and has to be convincing, has to show that there is threat, an imminent threat against society. Under those circumstances, of course, the person can remain in custody and that detention will not be considered unlawful. All right, so let's take a look at this one more time. Habeas corpus is a legal principle that protects an individual's right to not be detained unlawfully. The term habeas corpus translates from Latin to "you shall have the body." Again, the government, the authority, shall have the body. Right? The body is the person, is the citizen we're talking about. Have the body in custody. And it refers to a legal action or a writ. A writ is a statement, a judgment, an order from a court through which a person can seek relief from unlawful detention. It allows a person in custody to effectively challenge the legality of the imprisonment before a court of law. And in some societies, the government cannot hold somebody for more than 48 hours without charging them to court. In some societies, more than 72 hours without charging them to court. You must prefer a charge or charges against that person, right, to ensure that that person is not being held unlawfully. So the writ of habeas corpus requires the custodian to bring the detainee before the court with evidence justifying the detention. If the court finds that the detention is indeed unlawful, then of course it can order the release. And that order is the writ we are talking about earlier, which is here, right here, the release of the individual, determining and declaring that the individual is held illegally or unlawfully. This principle is fundamental to ensuring personal freedom. Please take note, students. Fundamental is key, is core, is the centerpiece and the pillar in most democratic societies that protects the citizens, especially the common citizens, to ensuring personal freedom and protecting against arbitrary arrest and detention and it is a cornerstone of many legal systems around the world. So, this is habeas corpus. It's important for us to understand its role in a democratic society, its role in protecting personal freedom and liberty, and how it is applied in society.